Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed that interview, and if you've been with us for the last two shows, you've now seen two different examples of people that have stepped up to lobby on issues that are important to them. And in each show, one of the things we've talked about is when you have a cause, when you have an issue, when you're going to be dealing with your elected officials, the thing that is going to sell is the passion. You have to be talking from your heart. And when you talk from your heart and you show that passion and you're working with your elected officials, they're going to see that passion, and that's the meaning. That's the opening, probably the closer as well. You've got to always bring that passion to the table. One of the reasons that we started out None of the Above with these two sets of interviews is I think one of the main issues that's eventually going to break the cycle of dysfunction is when more people get involved in the process. Obviously, the first step in getting involved in the process, and we talked about that earlier today, is voting. The second step in getting involved in the process is you have to actually become an advocate on issues. Now, there's different ways to become an advocate on issues, and in the case of Warren Klug, who was representing the Aspen Resort Chamber Association, they've been advocating on immigration issues at the national level, and today we were talking to Ralph and Sophia. They're advocating on a much narrower issue, a local issue. But it doesn't matter if it's a national issue or a local issue. The same construct has to be involved in your lobbying, in how you are going to present your passion and how you're going to go about trying to resolve the issue. So what I want to do is just go over a few essentials in terms of what you need to bring with you when you are going to start your lobbying effort, and how you're going to get organized, and hopefully how you're going to be successful. I am actually a lobbyist by profession. I've been doing this for many years. I'm kind of a hired gun. What we're talking about today is a citizen lobbyist, though. It's not totally different, however, from a professional lobbyist. There's certain components that you want to bring to the table to have a successful campaign. And again, we talked about some of those with Warren, Ralph, and Sophia. Just want to do a little recap for you before we move on. As citizen lobbyists, I think the first thing that's important in lobbying, in any effort for that matter, is you've got to be well organized. And in the case of lobbying, you've got to build an effective coalition. Obviously, you could go in one-on-one and sit down with the elected officials, but the more broad-based you can be in your approach, the more people you can be bringing to the table with you, the better off that you're going to be. And my catchphrase for this is called strength in numbers. So if you have a cause and you've got that passion, what you want to find is other people that share your passion. In the case of Warren Klug, he spoke about working through the local chamber, and then at the national level, they ratcheted up to the hotel association. So that's how they got their critical mass, how they got their strength in numbers. And I think you could see from today's show how Ralph and Sophia went about organizing at the local level and building their base. So be organized, form as broad base of a coalition as you can, drive your issue with strength in numbers. The second thing that is critical is access. Now, access is a simple way of saying you've got to get in front of the person that's the decision maker. You've got to force yourself, not force yourself, you've got to force the situation so you get in front of the decision maker and can explain your case. Now, oftentimes, and again, Warren talked about this at the federal level, you might get in front of the congressman or the senator for a matter of minutes and spend the rest of the time with staff. That's okay, as long as you are in front of the key decision makers. Now, there's different ways of going about doing that, and Warren and Ralph and Sophia have taken slightly different approaches. One of the phrases I used in the first show, and it's one of my wife's favorite phrases, again, is you can't go in the front door, go in the back door. Can't go in the back door, then go in through the side window. You've got to create the access, you've got to find out who the decision makers are, and then you have got to get in front of the decision makers. And once you get in front of the decision makers, you've got to stay in front of them. If you have this conversation and then you wait 2 or 3 months and your issue is still obviously a burning issue for you, but you haven't gone back to the official, you are probably off the screen at that point. So you've got to get the access and you've got to sustain the access. Now, when you're in front of the official or when you're making your case, you have to have a reasoned ask. Elected officials are used to people coming to them and having an ask. Here's why I'm here, and here is the solution. Here is what I'm asking for. So they're looking for an ask, but they're also looking for a reasoned ask. You cannot ask them to do the impossible. You can't ask them to do something that's outside the purview of their authority. And quite frankly, the bottom line for them is you can't ask them to do something that's probably going to cause them to risk an election. Elected officials want to keep their jobs. Remember, we talked about job performance and keeping their job earlier in the segment today. You've got to make an ask that's a reasonable ask. And I think in this case, today in particular, the housing ask is, although a difficult ask, was a reasoned ask under the circumstances. Finally, we've talked about keeping up pressure. Pressure is the bottom line on all of this. The elected officials have got to feel as though this is a difference maker for them. This is the difference maker in their community. It's a difference maker when people are going to go and vote. This is something that they are going to make a decision on as to whether or not this person keeps their job, which somewhat ties back to strength in numbers. Putting pressure on the elected official means showing up and not just saying, you know, I'm Steve Smith or Judy Jones, and I am a vote, and I'm going to vote this way. You can show up with 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. The more the merrier in that respect. That is going to help you create this pressure. This is the one I'm going to call gotta have it. You've got to have this answer. You've got to have this result, or your elected official has got to feel that pressure, and if not, it's going to show up in the next election.